The January 6th committee hearings want to prove that Trump attempted a coup. But are they actually convincing anyone? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Well, folks, it's time for the media event of the century. The televised hearings investigating the January 6th Capitol riot. Critics are calling it must-see TV. Filled with insurrectionists that still packs a punch. I kind of miss the days when Thursday night must-see TV was Seinfeld and ER. Anyway, last Thursday, the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol held its first of 6 planned hearings. And yes, they aired the first hearing during prime time, which is fantastic news for cable TV. Who wouldn't want to make those sweet, sweet advertising dollars by making Trump relevant again to bash him? Think of the ratings. Trump and the media, they hate each other, but they need each other, just like Jerry and Newman. The January 6th committee is headed by 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans. It's been a year since it started investigating the January 6th riot. Now the committee's going public with evidence that they gathered, and they're focused on blaming Trump for what happened at the Capitol, since he called for a rally back then. Now the hearings aren't a criminal court trial. They're just trying to lay the groundwork for potential criminal cases. And the committee has a definite spin on things. It's all about Trump. They really want to drill into your brain that Trump was at the center of an attempted coup.
After his term ended, Donald Trump was at the center of this conspiracy. And ultimately, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, spurred a mob of domestic enemies of the Constitution to march down the Capitol and subvert American democracy.
Republican Liz Cheney, a fierce Trump critic, is also in the committee. She claims Trump both summoned a mob and orchestrated a sophisticated plan to overturn the election.
President Trump summoned the mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of this attack. Over multiple months, Donald Trump oversaw and coordinated a sophisticated 7-part plan to overturn the presidential election and prevent the transfer of presidential power.
A 7-part plan? Wow, I didn't know Trump could make any plans with more than 2 parts. Tweet, then gloat. The committee showed key witness testimonies and footage to prove these claims, which I'll get into later. And committee members have been pretty clear about what they want to see happen. They say they have enough evidence for the Department of Justice to indict Trump on criminal charges. They weren't specific about what criminal charges those would be. One federal judge in a previous civil case indicated that he thought Trump more likely than not committed federal crimes, like obstructing an official proceeding and conspiracy to defraud the U.S. But for now, this is all just speculation. Just because the committee members say they have enough evidence doesn't mean they do. For example, right after the January 6th riot, Trump was impeached by the House for inciting an insurrection, before being acquitted by the Senate. But Trump was never indicted on those insurrection charges, because as we have covered in our previous episodes, proving that Trump actually incited an insurrection is legally hard to do. As one law professor states, saying things that foreseeably move some audience members to act illegally isn't enough. Speaking recklessly isn't enough. Even the New York Times admitted it. Trump used a lot of violent imagery and insinuations as he whipped up anger among his followers, directed them to fight much harder, and sent them to march on the Capitol, but he never expressly directed them to commit crimes. As of this recording, 3 members of the right-wing organization, the Oath Keepers, have pleaded guilty to the federal charge of seditious conspiracy. But according to Reuters, the FBI hasn't found evidence the U.S. Capitol attack was coordinated. There was no concrete agreement, let alone an actual plan to hinder the execution of a law, or even serious plans on what to do once they got in. They probably thought, wow, I didn't think I'd get this far. Even if they did, this isn't legal proof that Trump was in on any plot. That's why the January 6th committee is doing these public hearings. It's pretty much taking Trump to the court of public opinion. So it's pretty clear that the committee is trying to use this primetime hearing to construct a narrative for the American people. But conservatives have their own narrative about the January 6th committee too. They're calling it a Soviet-style show trial. I'll explain why after the break. Welcome back. The January 6th committee is trying to prove that Trump is responsible for the January 6th riot last year. They've done everything they can think of to make sure the hearings reach the largest possible audience. But some media aren't taking the bait. Fox News, for example, wasn't a real fan of the committee hearing. They didn't bother playing the hearing live. According to Fox News darling Tucker Carlson, the hearing wasn't worth hearing.
The whole thing is insulting. In fact, it's deranged, and we're not playing along. They are lying, and we are not going to help them do it.
And like Tucker Carlson, many on the right reacted to the hearing in a calm, reasonable way, by calling the committee hearing an inquisition and equating it to a Soviet-style show trial to prop up a dying, corrupt regime. Watch out, they're out to get you.
What they really want to do is criminalize the things that you do, that I do, that everyone watching does when they oppose Democrat policies. I mean, this is kind of an existential threat to how our republic works.
No, I'm not sure the January 6th committee is out to get all people who oppose Democrats. Well, other than Trump, but where's the fun and nuance? Here's the thing. Republicans need this outrage against Democrats. It's all part of the outrage cycle. Republicans are feeding off the outrage against Democrats while the Democrats are feeding off the outrage against Republicans. A perfect symbiotic relationship. And once you add Trump to the mix, everything goes at double speed. It's like a terrible reality show no one can turn off. Another narrative from the right is that the January 6th hearing is a distraction. They're just distracting us from the real issues, like inflation and the supply chain crisis. And Trump's Political Action Committee says it's not just a distraction, it's also a partisan witch hunt.
Our country is in trouble. Biden is failing badly. And yet the Democrat Congress ignores our problems, instead spending millions on another partisan witch hunt. It's a disgrace. Tell your congressman stop the partisan games and tackle our real problems.
Wow, subtle. But despite all the drama, there is some truth to the right-wing accusations. A congressional committee hearing sounds like the people in it are impartially looking at evidence, but that's not what's happening. The committee has a narrative that it wants to push, that Trump should be indicted for committing crimes. And some of the ways it does that is outright deceptive. I'll tell you why right after the break. Welcome back. The January 6th committee hearings want to prove that former President Donald Trump attempted a coup. One of the committee's goals is to prove Trump's allies and Trump himself knew the election wasn't rigged.
This morning, we'll tell the story of how Donald Trump lost an election and knew he lost an election, and as a result of his loss, decided to wage an attack on our democracy.
After all, the riots happened because people wanted to fight back against election fraud. If it could be shown Trump knew the election wasn't rigged, then that would mean he used people's anger for his own nefarious ends. Footage from former Attorney General William Barr, played during the hearing, indicated that he believes there was no election fraud.
I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations.
Barr isn't exactly seen as a Trump ally these days, but even Trump's daughter appeared to agree.
I respect Attorney General Barr, so I accepted what he was saying.
Of course, Trump couldn't help but respond to this by talking about how Bill Barr sucked. Ah, yes, there's the former president we all know and have strong opinions about. The January 6th committee also wanted to prove that the riot was coordinated. It played footage of rioters who admitted that they were inspired by Trump.
We were invited by the President of the United States!
What really made me want to come was the fact that, I had supported Trump all that time. I did believe, that the election was being stolen, and Trump asked us to come.
He personally asked for us to come to D.C. that day. I know why I was there, and that's because he called me there and he laid out what is happening in our government.
They also presented footage from Nick Quested, a British filmmaker who documented the meeting between leaders of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. The committee also made a point to say Trump refused to act during the riot for hours. To show just how horrible the riot was, the committee presented a police officer at the scene. She described first-hand experience of carnage and chaos at the Capitol. The committee also played a clip produced by former ABC News executive James Goldston. Goldston is helping the committee produce footage for the hearings. And this clip in particular was billed as including never-before-seen footage. Over part of the footage, Goldstein added in a soundbite from an interview Trump gave after January 6th.
They were peaceful people. These were great people. The crowd was unbelievable. And I mentioned the word love, the love in the air. I've never seen anything like it.
But as bad as the riot was, that clip was very deceptive. It completely took Trump's words out of context. In context, it's clear that Trump, in the interview, was talking about his peaceful rally a mile away from the riot. Trump wasn't describing the rioters as peaceful people filled with love. And there were also some things missing from the hearing. For example, Mike Pence. According to some experts, the hearing is trying to make this about Trump versus Pence instead of Trump versus Biden, because making it about Trump versus Pence makes it seem less political and partisan. The committee started setting this up the first day of the hearings. According to Liz Cheney, only then Vice President Mike Pence called the National Guard to defend the Capitol. Cheney also said Trump, aware of the rioters' chance to hang Pence, responded by saying they had the right idea. Although things between him and Trump have gone sour, Pence has showed no interest in even getting involved with the hearing, at least as of this recording. Also missing from the hearing, video clips that showed not every Trump supporter at the riot was okay with violence. Many booed people breaking into the Capitol, like this one. Another thing that was missing? Testimony given to the House Oversight Committee in May 2021, where former acting Defense Secretary Christopher Miller said that Trump approved the presence of the National Guard ahead of time. To be fair, Trump approved the National Guard's presence in order to protect his supporters, not the Capitol. And Miller decided not to send them because he was concerned it might look like Trump was attempting a military coup. But it still undermines the committee's case against Trump just a little bit, which is a problem with the January 6th committee hearing. It's clearly being driven by the need to create characters that fit into a perfectly crafted story, one that condemns Trump as the mastermind behind an attack on U.S. democracy. But the more the committee tries to push this narrative while omitting information, the less believable it is for people who aren't already on their side. And most people seem to have made up their mind on the January 6th riot. That's according to a new poll by the University of Massachusetts Amherst. 52% of people say it's important to learn more about January 6th, while 48% just want to move on. And it's almost entirely partisan. There's also been a big decline in people who want to hold people accountable for January 6th compared to last year. So it looks like even some Democrats are getting sick of talking about January 6th, which is not good news for the committee. Although the biggest problem for the committee's must-see TV lineup could be that this all feels like a rerun. After all, Trump has already been impeached by Democrats and acquitted by Republicans. Twice. After 2 years of breathless media coverage about Trump's Russia collusion, the Mueller report found no collusion, and it made no decision on whether Trump obstructed justice. Every time someone has promised Trump will be indicted for a crime, it hasn't happened. How many times can they keep recycling the same plot? Of course, I'm recording this episode as the hearings are still ongoing. It's totally possible there could be some mind-blowing revelation, one that doesn't involve Rudy Giuliani being drunk. Find out next time on Outrageous. Just think of the ratings. So what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. And we could not make this show without support from viewers like you. You can help us for as little as $1 per episode at patreon.com/AmericaUncovered. or on our exclusive censorship-free social media platform, AmericaUncovered.locals.com. The links to both are in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.